Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. This is our YouTube channel, and there is the executive producer, Huck. And it's Huck TV, it's her channel. She went to the vet today. She got her nails clipped. She went through a health checkup, and she is healthy. And she's just 3.5 years old, weighs 115 pounds. And the vet says she's in perfect health, perfect weight, and everything's great. And all of the girls in the vet's office loved Huck. She went around, made friends with everybody. So, and there in the background is the Bigfoot Cruise, and that's November 9th through the 16th. Symphony of the Seas. Go to Gather Up Events and sign up. Myself, Jeff Meldrum, Ryan Golombeski, and Mariah Mayer are going to be the speakers on the cruise. And it's going to be fun. We're going to the Virgin Islands, Nassau in the Bahamas, St. Martin. It'll be a blast. This will be my third one. I've had great time at all of them. Need to go. All right. Let's get on it. Hey, Huck, what are you doing? He's a good girl. All right. Today, we've got one big case, really big case. Before I get into the nuts and the bolts about the incident, I think I'm going to be able to save some people some real headache and maybe even save a life. This is an article that just came up the 25th of March. Some of you might have heard about this, but I'm going to explain some background details for you. Family on Las Vegas Grand Canyon vacation vanished on a road trip. Tourists were last known to be traveling from the Grand Canyon to Las Vegas March 13th, Arizona authorities say. A trio of South Korean tourists disappeared during a road trip between the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas, Arizona officials say. Last known to be traveling in a rental car on Interstate 40 on March 13th. When the family of three didn't make their scheduled flight home, a family member called the Korean consulate in LA. We were contacted on the 18th of March by the South Korean consulate, advised of three missing individuals that were traveling from the Grand Canyon to Vegas, Coconino County Sheriff said. The rental vehicle's last known location coincides with a fatal pileup accident at the same interstate during a winter storm, according to a news release from Arizona Public Safety. Crash happened at 3:27 p.m. westbound Interstate 40 near milepost 159 in Williams, Arizona. The winter weather conditions which caused the busy interstate to pile up with ice and snow, caused a tractor trailer to jackknife and completely obstruct the roadway. Involved vehicles were engulfed in flames, including some that burned for 20 hours at extreme temperatures. I guess they couldn't get fire rigs in there, huh? A total of 36 drivers and occupants were involved, including 2 fatalities. 16 people were injured. 2 people who died in the wreck were from Arizona. Officials with the sheriff's office said that they are concerned that the rental vehicle's GPS rerouted the family into a Forest Service road. Quote, it was our concern that because of the weather conditions that day, that the major accident, the GPS may have rerouted them. And if you've ever traveled up in northern Arizona, you can get rerouted sometimes with GPS. This is the weirdest quote yet. Detectives do not know if the missing family were part of the fiery pileup, saying that it is not known if the vehicle was involved in the accident. The family of 3 was driving a 2024 white BMW with California license plates. Now, why am I talking to you about this? Because families have died getting rerouted on GPS. Folks, I've said this to you when you're on the trail. Now I'm going to talk to you about this when you're in your car. Do not trust GPS in your car. They will reroute you sometimes on a dirt road that will take you into death. Yes. Families in Oregon and California have died taking these rerouted locations, and that may have happened to this Korean couple. I don't know yet. Now, why am I telling you this? because I want you to carry a hard copy map with you. Now you can go into Staples or Office Depot and they have driving maps there. And you think, well, Dave, how stupid. No, because when they reroute you on some of these things, I want you to be aware which direction you're going. Most cars now have compasses in them. If you don't have a compass, you have one on your phone. And you need to know where you are going. If you're going on a dirt road, think twice. Because that dirt road could get very bad very quickly. And if you're not driving a 4x4, do not drive on the dirt road. All right? I'm just telling you that. I don't know what happened to this Korean couple, but it's not good. I got this letter. Thought I would share with you a bizarre incident that happened to my brother-in-law while hiking in the Tuli River area, real close to the reservation located in Tulare County, California. Started on February 20th, 2025. The Tuli River Reservation in California is epic. They have a 1,500-year-old pictograph drawn on this giant boulder of a Bigfoot. It can't be anything else, folks. It can't be anything else. 1,500 years old. We are fans of the late Scott Carpenter and his videos, and we went out at night to do various Bigfoot calls right below the reservation at 8 p.m. and stopped at about 8:30. We honestly do not hear or see anything that night, but after we got back to our hotel room, I woke up early in the morning and realized that not only my digital military watch was mysteriously changed from 12-hour time to 24-hour, but it was exactly 12 hours behind from that on my cell phone. Also, the microwave in the room was displaying 24-hour time and 12 hours behind as well. And every time 1 p.m. would occur on my watch and microwave would reset itself to 12-hour current time and date. And then at 1 a.m., it would revert back 12 hours in the past and a 24-hour time display. This has not stopped since and is still ongoing. My watch has never done this before. Now, why am I telling you this? My gut tells me right away, low battery. Just a hunch. Maybe something else weird happened. He goes on to say, I think it's possible that we've been taken somewhere 2:21:25 at 1 a.m. On the 22nd of February, we decided to go on a hike up the Tuli River. Nobody else was out on the trail. We were close to an ancient sequoia grove when we were getting hit with dizzy spells and extreme fatigue despite the easy hike, which was relatively flat. My brother took a photo of me crossing the river and we started heading back to where our vehicle was parked about 2 miles away. But halfway there, we were getting hit with extreme fatigue again. And that was strange considering we are not old and we are in decent shape. I covered the part I wanted to cover. If you ever get into and around sequoia trees, big sequoia grove, a Native American taught me this about 25 years ago. He said, Dave, when you're in that grove, look up at the canopy of the tree. It's the weirdest thing. Sequoias, maybe about 100, 150 feet up, there looks like there's a floor up there that you can't see past. So much of that tree has fallen down in on itself, all of them are this way, that it looks like there's a floor up there. Now, when I was in Hoopa, the natives said, Dave, there is a floor up there, and that's where the Bigfoot live. And I had 2 witnesses tell me that they saw a Bigfoot crawling up the sequoias. Now, these sequoias, the big ones, they have big indentations where you could put your hands on and you could use them to crawl up. This Native American said the Bigfoot grabbed each side and crawled all the way up. The sequoias are not smooth on the side. There's big, almost like gouges in the side of the tree. But I thought it was an interesting story, and sequoias do have this thing up there that you gotta look for when you go out. Very odd. And every time I was out there after that, I always thought that they must be living up there. Okay, the story for today. Friends, Michigan is a weird place. And tell you that in all the research I've done on the Great Lakes, they are a strange place. The story deals with a young man named Stephen Earl Kraft, 12 years old, missing February 15th, 2001 at 8 o'clock at night. He lived in a city called Benton Harbor. He was a student at Hull Elementary, which also had junior high. He lived with his parents, Steve and Shireel, and they had a younger brother named Eddie. He had one. On February 8th, 8 days before this event, Stephen was at school and he got into a fight with a couple other kids. The people said that the other kids started the fight. Stephen participated. And all of them were suspended for 5 days. Stop you there for a second. When I was in school, exact same thing happened. This bigger kid picked a fight with me. What are you supposed to do? You got to defend yourself. Well, I won. He got the worst of it. We get called into the principal's office, and the principal says you're both suspended for a week. And I go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't start the fight. And you have all these witnesses that said I didn't start it. Yeah, but you participated and you're gone. My dad, one who believes in doing the right thing, came down and he said, in front of the principal, he goes, Dave, what happened? I explained to him. And he goes, Principal, did Dave lie? No, that's what happened. My dad said, well, then why are you suspending him? And he said, because he participated. And my dad looks at the principal and goes, is he supposed to get pummeled? He didn't say anything. So my dad said, well, he either goes back to school or my attorney's going to come down here right now. And the principal said, Dave, could you leave the room for a moment? They closed the door, and 10 minutes later, I come out. My dad goes, hey, let's go to the car. We're going to go to Baskin Robbins and get an ice cream. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He goes, no, you're going back to school tomorrow. The principal just asked if you could take him home for today. It won't be anything on his record. He's just going to get the afternoon off. So you see, you have to stand up for your rights. And you have to stand up for what is right. If you're getting pummeled, you don't have to sit there and be pummeled. The law says you can defend yourself. Some of these school people, even back in my time, were a little crazy. Okay, so Stephen got pummeled. He defended himself. He got suspended. So Thursday was his last day on suspension, and now it's Thursday night. So wait a minute. So he lives at a place called 2103 Holly Street, right near the airport, in a place called Benton Heights. Part of the city of Benton Harbor, but it's considered the Heights. And they lived on a dead-end street. Now, since the incident has happened, the home has been torn down to make room for a longer runway at Southwest Michigan Regional Airport, eminent domain. So, February 15th, 2001, 6:45 at night, his last day of suspension is over. He goes to school the next day. Stephen told his parents that he was going to go outside and play with his 2 dogs. It was just below freezing, nothing unusual. He wasn't wearing a big coat, just wearing a long sleeve shirt. So he goes out and he takes his 2 dogs. The older dog is a German Shepherd Chow mix. The younger dog is a 6-month-old puppy, 100% German Shepherd. People said that they just always hung with him, everywhere. And Stephen was the kind of kid who was always liked to be outside, didn't matter the weather. Mom told him at 8 o'clock, dinner would be ready, and you got to come home. He goes, yeah, I'll be there. Well, at 8 p.m., he doesn't come back. And nobody really thought anything of it. He had a half-sister that lived just down the block, and he often went over there to see her and her husband and his nephew. Well, at about 9:30, Steve, the dad, did start to get concerned. He started to call friends and relatives. He started going around looking for his son. Initially, not too worried, because Stephen knew everyone in the neighborhood. He grew up in the neighborhood. Wasn't too worried. But as time went on, he started to get worried. The dad, Steve, called everybody he knew. Couldn't locate him, and couldn't locate the dogs, which was even more unusual. Now, you follow Missing 411, you know the importance of dogs. Well, at 1 a.m. the next morning, the mom, her name was Shireel, called Benton Harbor police and reported Stephen as a missing person. Now, already the weather was starting to change and it was going to be frigid. It was already cold outside, but now everyone was getting worried because Steve only had a long sleeve shirt on, long sleeve type shirt. Wasn't wearing a heavy coat. Now, everything said that the ponds and the creeks and the rivers in the area were frozen. Now, because they lived in the city of Benton Harbor police responded. Now, even in 2020, the population of Benton Harbor was only 8,800 people. So they had a relatively small city. But the weird thing is that they had a Coast Guard detachment at the harbor for the lake. And the city was surrounded by Berrien County, Michigan. Police responded, quickly realized something was wrong, and they initially get a report. And you got to remember the police officer's frame of mind. He gets told, oh yeah, my son is just coming off of 5 days of suspension of fighting in school. He went out to play with the dogs. He's not back yet. I'm not sure the frame of mind of the police officer that's taken the reports, but you could see how it could easily gone astray. But the police officer did notify the superiors, and soon the incident was escalated. So I'm going to show you a picture. At the top, that's Stephen when he disappeared. And that's an age progressed chart of what he looks like today. 12 years old when he disappeared. Now, age progression, pretty accurate. What it does is it takes a picture of the father, sometimes relatives, and you can take the skeletal features of a young man and progress that up pretty well. Harvey Pratt does that really well. Well, Benton Harbor, being a small police department, they requested the assistance of Berrien County Sheriffs. They also requested the assistance of the Coast Guard and Michigan State Police and the Michigan Fish and Game Department. Right off the bat, just like with every disappearance around water, and it was right around water, the lake was nearby, creeks, rivers, ponds are all nearby, very close. So Berrien County went out and they put a dive team in the various pieces of water trying to clear them. Articles stated at the time that ice on most of these was 8 inches thick. The next day, there was a deep freeze. It was really cold. Police divided up the northeast part of the city and they started an organized grid search, which is exactly what they should have done. Now, the Michigan State Police and the Coast Guard sent resources that included a helicopter with FLIR. And that first day, if Stephen was still alive, his body would have been radiating heat. And if he had died within an hour or two, it would still be radiating heat. Now, the police department had the ability to put a bloodhound right out there right away. And the dog tracked Stephen to the end of his street. Remember, I told you it was a dead-end street. and tracked him to near a nursery where they lost the scent near the woods. Remember that. So think about it. Small city, 8 o'clock at night. 12-year-old boy playing it near a dead-end street near the woods. Who is out there on a cold night? Come on. Well, the police went out and they interviewed people on the street right away. And they stated that they saw Stephen at the end of the street near the woods at 8 o'clock. And they said nobody else was in the area. They said that. But you got to remember something. They weren't also just looking for Stephen. They were looking for 2 dogs. Now, dogs bark. Dogs leave tracks. And they found tracks right in that area of the dogs. The next day, February 17th, continuing with the grid search, they get 100 people from Benton Harbor to help. It's still freezing cold. And more canines from Michigan show up, state police. More people arrive with ATVs, and they put equestrians into the hard-to-reach areas. Still nothing. The 18th of February, there were 2 dogs that went missing. One was an adult German Shepherd Chow mix, and that was found by searchers eating on a deer carcass. Had to survive, right? This lifted the hopes of searchers and families. Yeah, I could see that. Now let me show you a map. So the street where he lived is gone. The house is gone. But they said that they had to extend a runway. And this is where he lived in the Heights. The only extension of a runway could have been right here. So I'm guessing his home had to have been here. Now the dog was found right here. This is the corner of those 2 streets. And this is all woods out in here. Go up in this direction, it's just all woods. So here's the airport. Here's the lake. River, pond, creek. I'm telling you, there's water everywhere. You kind of get a feeling for it. This airport is still here. It's only gotten bigger. Michigan Southwest Regional. So they found one of the dogs. And the search and rescue decides to push out the perimeter even further. The next day, on the 19th, searchers find the 6-month-old puppy, about 12 hours after they find the other dog. Nothing was reported on the condition of either dog, but I stated in my notes, I think it's a bit ironic that within 12 hours you find both dogs. I think it's really, really odd. And what I said was, dogs bark. So let's just pretend that Stephen was kidnapped. He's obviously in a building somewhere in the city, somewhere in that search area. That's what they're thinking. And the dogs had to have been there too, because they weren't in the search area. So my question is, would there be dog tracks around the house? Would that be a place that people would go and search? Of course it would be. And why would a suspect ever hold dogs that could bark? Little hint, they would. Dogs don't talk. So none of this is making sense. But suddenly these dogs are released into this area. And no, a suspect isn't going to drive back into a search area to dump off dogs with the possibility of getting stopped and questioned. No, they don't care. February 20th. The FBI Violent Crime Task Force joins Benton Harbor Police in the search. I don't know why they didn't assign the Child Abduction Task Force to this. I told you before, I worked on the polyclass abduction with an FBI task force, Child Abduction Task Force. I can tell you flat out, those guys are unbelievable. Everyone I worked with was unbelievable. First of all, they were all ex-city cops that joined the FBI. The head of the task force, one time when we were hanging out, he said, "Dave, I picked those guys for a reason. They put more handcuffs on people in a year than most of the guys back in my office have in a career. They're used to talking to bad guys. That's who I want." Well, February 20th, Stephen Kraft, the dad, tells the press that he was requested by FBI agents to take a polygraph test. And he passed. And I got the feeling from the tone of the articles that he was upset that he was asked. Let's go backwards a little bit. When Benton Harbor police were collecting data, the mom said she stayed home and the husband went out looking for the son. So there was a time there, maybe he was angry that the son didn't come back, maybe he did something to the son. But there was that time gap where he was alone. So the FBI needed to account for that. And so we don't have to spend one iota of time focusing on you. Just come on, take a polygraph and you're gone and you'll never hear from us again. There's a lot of method to this madness. When you look at the vast majority of times when somebody in a family disappears or is killed, another family member does it. It's just the facts. So to eliminate a suspect is huge. He went in, he took it, he passed. They didn't even think about him again. And he assisted on many of the searches, etc. February 21st, detectives and FBI interview neighbors and relatives. And they sent a team of investigators to the school, which makes complete sense. Complete sense. Why is that? Well, remember, Stephen was suspended. He got jumped at school by some kids. You needed to figure out if maybe some older relatives wanted some vengeance on Steve. You just got to clear it. And they did. And there was nothing there. The level of frustration in the detectives' comments was very high. There's so much stress in these investigations at this point, it's off the chart. Because everybody, I was in a room with 30 FBI agents and police officers, I can tell you everybody was on drinking coffee, fired up. You couldn't get people more motivated. I'm sure it was this way with Stephen's case too. They sent 2 detectives to Milwaukee to follow up a lead that was never explained, except they came back and they said that there was nothing there and nothing to talk about. Not sure what it was all about, they never explained. The Berrien Sheriff's Office cleared 4 miles of creek in the area in 4 days. Phenomenal effort. Unbelievable harsh conditions. Search and rescue terminated February 22nd. They got nothing. No clothes, no nothing. And they said they had nothing. I'm sorry, but this is the point, and they probably did it, that you have to go back and redo everything again. Redo everything. Interview people again. Can I search your house? I just want to make sure that nothing happens. Somebody didn't bring something in, just so I can put it in the report. You have to ask these things. If they say no, you walk away. June 10th, 2000, you're talking about a young person's life. You have to ask. If I offend somebody by asking, oh, that's too bad. Because I got 2 parents back there that are just killing themselves in anxiety. June 10th, 2001, creeks and rivers We're not frozen now. So we're talking about 4 months later, and a new search starts clearing the creeks that are not frozen anymore, thinking that they're going to find a body. They had posters of Stephen throughout the state of Michigan, milk cartons, everything. The FBI now listed Stephen on their website as a kidnapping. I couldn't believe it. I've never seen him do something like that. Why? There's no evidence. Maybe suspicious circumstance, but there's no evidence he was kidnapped. They say that all the time, and everything I researched said that there was no evidence. Stephen had a sister that lived just down the street. Her name was Jody Bopp. She was interviewed by the press. She believed her brother was kidnapped. There was a detective from Benton Harbor Police who was on the case the whole time, named Delmar Lang. He said they have zero physical evidence anything happened. He said that during the course of the search, 1/3 of the entire city of Benton Harbor was searched by a grid pattern. He said that the pilot of the state and Coast Guard helicopter got so low they could tell that there were rabbit tracks in the ice and the snow that they were following. They interviewed Detective Farallone from the FBI task force. They said, well, do you think he was abducted by an outside predator? And he said, no. No, I don't. He said, Stephen lived on a dead-end street. They got tracks leading into the woods, and some tracks that led towards a ministry center. He said, dead-end street. Nobody's going to walk on a dead-end street on a late Thursday night. Nobody's hanging around there. He made it clear. And he said, it's my opinion? No. He wasn't taken by someone he didn't know. That's important. But that statement sort of implies that he may think that he was taken by somebody he does know. Fast forward 2 more years, 2003. Detectives were questioned again by the press, and they said everything had slowed down. The number of leads that they had received reduced dramatically. A year later, 2004, $5,000 reward posted for Stephen. A detective named Robert O'Brien was interviewed, and he said, I guess he hasn't heard of us. He said, people just don't vanish. That's what he said. He said that there are 6 leads that they're still working. He wouldn't extrapolate. A year later, 2005, the Kraft home was torn down to make room for that longer runway. The street was also demolished. It doesn't exist anymore. 2012, 7 years later, Stephen Kraft, the dad, makes a public plea for more information about his son. Many times when I research these cases, it seems like there's a strain of tragedy in them. What do you mean, Dave? I mean, it seems like the lives of these people were filled with anxiety and grief for years. Because here's what I found. March 28th, 1993, Mrs. Kraft goes into a hospital to give birth to a new baby, Curtis Lee Kraft, and the baby dies right after birth. Folks, that's tragedy. 8 years later, Stephen disappears. That's more grief than any family can ever imagine. 4 years later, the Kraft home is taken through eminent domain, and the street they lived on is gone, and the house is gone. February 19th, 2021, almost exactly 20 years after Stephen disappears, his dad, Stephen Sr., dies. You go, Dave, what? Say that again? February 19th, 2021, almost exactly 20 years after Stephen disappears, his dad, right there, dies at 59 years old. 2 months later, Stephen's mom dies at 60 years old. Tell me that that isn't a line of hardship. Come on, you got to admit that. Stephen's case, still an active FBI missing person case. Well, there have been rumors over the years that people have seen him in different cities. Nothing ever panned out. I've never read anything on this case that said search warrants were ever done on anyone's house. Business. That's not good. That means they have very little evidence, if anything, on anyone. "25 years since the incident, where were the dogs the first 3 days during the search?" You could hear dogs barking. They were both starving. Where were they? There were rumors 10 years after Stephen disappeared that a killer that killed 2 boys in another state had driven through Benton Harbor. The FBI did a complete workup on it, and they found out that they could not put that killer in Benton Harbor at the time Stephen disappeared. It was, the months were way different, but it made big news for a while. This area of Michigan, along the lake, has had some of the strangest disappearances you can imagine. Planes, people. Just south of here in Holland, or I'm sorry, I think it's north, a guy walks out on the ice, disappears. Months later, he wakes up on a lawn in Massachusetts. They thought he fell through the ice. I wrote about it. Missing 411, a sobering coincidence. Very strange. Very strange. Now, why do I put this case on a missing 411? I think it's pretty easy. Nobody will see it, but I see it. He disappears with 2 dogs, not 1, 2 dogs. Water everywhere. In an area where there's a lot of strange disappearances. There's not 1 shred of evidence that he was kidnapped. None. Wish I had more answers, folks. Remember, go to Kickstarter.com, Missing 411 National Parks. We need big help, folks. Big help if we're going to make our number. If we don't make our number, we don't get any of the money you guys have contributed. We need everyone putting this on their social media, pushing it hard. Please get it out there. Thank you so much for being here. Huck's yawning, snoring. Anyhow, you guys are great. Thanks for everything. Please share this on your social media. Paulides out.